Three, two. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Gruber Wired Hour. This is our special Thanksgiving edition. My name is Mark Beach.
And my name is John Dotson, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We've made it here this year.
Gobble, gobble.
Yum, yum. Food coming. Anyway, today we have a very special guest from Quabbin Wire and Cable. We have Mr. Steve Spoonts with us. Hello, Steve. Good morning.
Hello, gentlemen. Good morning to y'all, too.
How you doing today?
Doing good. Just counting down the days now till Thanksgiving.
Yeah, a few
Hard
days
to believe
away.
it's here.
I know, time flies. Well, kind of like turkeys fly too, right?
The greatest moment in television history.
Yes. He knows what we're talking about. Les Nessman.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
So, how are things in Dallas?
Things are good here. Our weather is beautiful. We're finally over our 100 plus degree days. Got a little more seasonable weather. Had a little rain yesterday. Just getting ready to smoke some turkeys on Wednesday. And I think most of the city will be tuned in to watch the Cowboys play Washington Thursday afternoon.
That's going to be a good game. It'll be a lot of fun. So how are things back in Massachusetts where the facility is?
Things are pretty good back there. We just finished our fiscal year. We didn't quite hit our plan, but we didn't go into the red. We had a record year in 2022, and so we had a pretty sizable target to hit this year. And of course, there have been a lot of things going on in the economy. I don't need to belabor, but we worked hard. We worked through a lot of the issues, or we worked our way through many or most all of the issues that we'd had that held over from 2020 with supply chain and all the rest of that. And we've got our inventory built back up, and we're in pretty good shape right now. Looking forward to a good fiscal 24, which kicked off back on November 1st.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Now, let's go back in time a little bit to the beginnings. The Quabbin consisted of what, two people in a 600 square foot office?
Something like that. Company was begun in 1975 up in Ware, Massachusetts. And Ware is if you look at the state of Massachusetts, Ware is a small town kind of in the center of the state. There's a big reservoir up there that supplies the drinking water to Boston and to much of that area. And that reservoir is called the Quabbin Reservoir. Everybody always wants to know, what does the word Quabbin mean, or where did it come from? That's where the name of the company comes from. And I understand it's from one of the Indian tribes up there. And I believe the meaning is the meeting of the waters. But yes, Quabbin started in 1975. Two men, the owner, Paul Engel, who is still active today, and his first employee was a man named Brian Page. Brian is still active today. Today, Brian oversees all the documentation regarding all the ROHAS and REACH documents and all of that type of thing. There are a lot of people that have been there for many, many, many decades, as well as some new blood as well. So we've got a nice mix of people, of veterans that have been there from the beginning. I personally have been there now 9 years, just started my 10th year. Well, it's a great little company up there. Paul is a United States Army veteran, so we are a veteran-owned, and everything we do in the United States. All of our design, all of our manufacturing, and all of our warehousing is done here in the U.S.
Oh, very nice.
That's great.
Yeah. Now, I also understand that Quabbin offers a lot of scholarships for people out there.
Yeah, we work closely with the school district and particularly the high schools in the area. We sponsor several days every year where we either go to the schools to talk about manufacturing opportunities. I know that there are some scholarships or internships where young people that are interested in manufacturing as a career choice can come in and learn and work. So yes, we're very involved in the community and in giving back to the city and the area around where they've been very good for us, and we're trying to do right by them too.
That's great.
Good deal. Should we get into some of the?
Getting into the meat and potatoes, what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I want to know, being an Arizona company and copper being one of our chief products that Arizona produces, is known for, we are the copper state, and that is a primary component of all data cabling. Does Quabbin use Arizona copper?
Yes, we do. And we are all copper. Our business is all copper. There are a lot of wire and cable companies that also offer a fiber optic component to their business, but all of our cables are copper based. Quabbin does not process copper itself, meaning that we don't buy the rod stock and then draw it down to the conductor size and things that we need. We get that from various converters, but all of the copper that our converters buy, and we also do buy some rod stock of our own that we keep located on premise of the people that actually draw it down for us. But all the copper that we get either comes from Arizona, I believe some of it comes from Canada as well. But again, keeping with our whole made in America, US based manufacturing model. So yeah, we're using your stuff. We appreciate y'all providing us with excellent quality copper.
Amen.
Nice.
Well, and I'll tell you, for all of the Build America, Buy America products, the Made in USA products, which are a requirement for a lot of companies, a lot of government entities around the U.S., what a great source it is, Quabbin cable.
Oh yeah, extremely. Got to say, it's just a great quality cable overall.
Yes,
Amen. Yep.
that's one thing I've been very, very pleased with in the time that I've been with Quabbin. I could probably count the number of quality issues that I've had with my accounts on one hand. Every one of those was rectified very, very quickly. And we do just build good stuff. I mean, the factory, I can't say enough good about the men and women in our factory and the job that they do up there. They make my life in sales much easier because of their diligence and commitment to producing a quality product.
Now, in regards to the copper, why have you chosen to use primarily stranded versus a solid copper?
Okay, well, let me go back and give you a little bit more of a history lesson. There, when Paul and Brian first started out, what their mission was to provide equals to brand B, primarily Belden, which is an excellent company. But they wanted to provide equals to many of the round gray cables that make up what Belden refers to as its classics. These are designs that have been designed in and have been in use for decades and decades and decades. Most all of those constructions were stranded in their construction. And what stranding gives you over solid conductors is it gives you great flexibility and greatly increased flex life. If you think of a of a coat hanger, we've all done this, gotten a coat hanger, bend it back and forth. You don't have to do it too many times before it begins to crack and break. That's what you get with a solid conductor cable. And they're very their applications are really for permanent type installation in a building, on a machine, things of that nature. So Quabbin got started building stranded conductor equals to Belden. And then when the data cables came around, we did, in fact, I understand, I wasn't around at that time, but we did put our toe into the solid conductor data world. But we are a smallish manufacturer. And if you look at the solid conductor data cable world these days, it's dominated by very, very large companies that have factories where they just turn that stuff on and run it for days at a time. And so it became pretty much a commodity type product. And what Quabbin decided to do was to leverage our expertise in stranded conductors. And so in our data cables, our Ethernet cables, we focus on stranded patch cable opportunities. So you won't find our cables like running through the wall there at Gruber headquarters and everything. You'll find patch cables either being the cable that comes from the wall plate to the back of your computer, or really most commonly today is what you see in a data center when you walk up and down those aisles and you look at the front of those cabinets at the patch panels. Those are all, the copper cables there are all stranded patch cables. And that's really where we focus and try to add our value today.
Great. So how much cable do you produce annually?
Well, I had to ask about that one, Mark. I didn't know that, but in our fiscal year that just ended at the end of October, we manufactured just over 135 million feet of cable. That's down a little bit from our fiscal 22, where we manufactured 144 million feet of cable. But let me also, right now, it's funny as I talk and I'm thinking about these things, I'm remembering different points that I want to bring up. Quabbin really has two factories in our facility up there in Ware, Massachusetts. We've got what we call our Quabbin facility, which is the original factory that makes primarily those multi-conductor, multi-pair, I'll call them gray cables, the things that we got started doing. Then back a couple of decades ago, we built a second manufacturing facility within the same building that we call our Datamax facility. That's much more modern, has concrete floors, and that's where we build our Datamax commercial Ethernet products, which is mainly what Gruber buys from us. And then we also manufacture our Datamax Extreme cables there, which are our ruggedized, harsh environment or industrial Ethernet cables.
So talking about harsh environment, so let's get more into that kind of scope of the cabling itself. When you say harsh environment, are you speaking of, like I think of like oil rigs where you have issues with all sorts of chemicals and things taking place around there? Kind of go on that.
Yeah. The way I'm a simple guy, and I like things broken down to be as simple and plain to understand as it can be. And I would look at our commercial products as being material that's going to go into probably air conditioned and carpeted offices. Mm-hmm. All right. Whereas harsh environment is going to be going into hot, possibly plain concrete floors, possibly dirt floors, where it's going to be subjected to maybe a lot of sunlight. You could have forklifts or other equipment maybe running over it. It could be built into part of a robot. We do sell a lot of cable that goes into the oil and gas industry, both out in the field and in refineries and control centers. You can even, it's funny, we tend to use the term harsh environment more than we do industrial. Because if you say industrial, in a way you kind of find yourself looking down a paper towel tube, and someone might say, well, gosh, I don't have a manufacturing facility, or I don't have a processing plant or whatever. I really can't use an industrial cable. But we've had applications, say, within a car dealership where they want to run power over Ethernet cameras in the parking lot to keep an eye on their inventory and everything. You can run these cables up a pole or outside the pole, and because of the jacketing compounds we use, they don't succumb to the ultraviolet light. You don't have the jacket crackage and all that other. So that's really not an industrial application in the true sense of that word, but it is harsh environment, particularly if you're in the sun, either in the Phoenix area or in Texas or anywhere else.
Yeah, so how does that play out in, say, an environment like here in Arizona, where we go from an extreme of like 118, 120 degrees, and actually in the winter we can get down below freezing at some point in time as
Right.
well. So, what is the scope and range of that?
Well, we use different jacketing compounds between the two product lines. In our um, commercial Ethernet product line, which again is what the majority of what Gruber buys from us, that typically has PVC insulation on the interconductors, and then it will have PVC jacket on the outside. It's made to be in a controlled environment indoors. Now, in that commercial Ethernet, we do also now offer jackets that are low smoke, zero halogen,
Hmm.
which is a very common jacket type used in Europe, where they don't want, if the is involved in a fire, that they don't want the gases and fumes from that melting plastic to kill people. We sell a lot of that, surprisingly, to the U.S. Navy, uses a lot of our low smoke, zero halogen cables on their ships because it's enclosed application where they try to reduce as much as they can the deadly nature of the plastic fumes. We also have some plenum rated cables in our commercial line. In the industrial line, our primary uh, jacket material is called TPE, for thermoplastic elastomer, which has a lot of the properties of polyurethane in terms of abrasion resistance. It's very well suited to being resistant to welding slag. And we can also use polyurethanes in that. We do have one or two part numbers that have a special PVC jacket. And then we've also got some zero halogen polyurethanes that we use in that harsh environment product line. But most of what we use is TPE, and it's because it's very durable, and cost wise, it's not nearly as much as what polyurethane is, but it provides a lot better protection for the cable than standard PVC does.
Okay, now this leads me back to the jacket. You talked about low smoke, zero halogen, and plenum. What's the difference between those two? I mean, we get this a lot from people. Can I use a low smoke, zero halogen, and a plenum, application?
If something calls out a plenum requirement, then you're going to need a plenum rated cable for that. As far as we know, Quabbin is the only manufacturer today, excuse me, in the world of a plenum rated stranded patch cable. Now, the way we do that is by using a foamed FEP insulation on the conductors. And then we do use a PVC jacket on the outside of it. But because most of the plastic content in the cable is in the insulation on the conductors, we're able to get a plenum rating on that cable. The plenum rated patch cables were really came to us from a customer out in New England area, I believe. It's outside of my region, that was working with the government, and the government was requiring a plenum rated installation completely through their data center. And that's what led us to develop these plenum rated patch cables. Low
Great.
smoke,
So,
zero halogen, on the other hand, just because of the compounds that are used, the lack of halogens. The halogens are what kills you if you
Yeah.
burn the plastic. So some of the trade-off, typically, if you go to a zero halogen cable, is the halogens tend to make the plastic a little softer and a little more flexible. So a lot of times you can find that a zero halogen cable may be a little bit stiffer than than a PVC cable would be, or whatever. And like most everything, John, it's a matter of trade-offs. If you need to have one thing, then you've got to be willing to give up something else. If you got to have a plenum cable, then you're going to need to be ready to pay a premium for that material that's used in it, which is, much more expensive than just your standard plastics.
Yeah.
Sure. And so in that kind of ruggedized environment, along those lines, that topic, you have a touring grade cable, right? That works in an AV broadcast type of environment.
Now, I don't know that we have a touring grade, but one of the markets that has really become a good one for us is that pro audio and pro lighting market. We have a couple of very big accounts that buy that, and what that's used for is primarily to run from the control console that you'll see in the middle of a concert hall, that's controlling all of the microphones, all of the sound, as well as a lot of the lighting and effects. Today, that's mostly all been converted to an Ethernet type control format. And they use our cable because, one, it'll hold up if people step on it and everything. But again, getting back to those stranded conductors and that high flexibility and high flex life, they're able to reel that stuff back in and use it over and over and over again. So yeah, the whole pro audio, pro video, pro lighting market has become a very important one of us, and it's certainly nothing that we ever foresaw when we first were thinking that this was just going to be used in factories for conveyor systems or for robotics or anything. One of the things that is most challenging in my sales position is to try to keep my mind open to where our products could possibly be used, rather than just pigeonholing them, kind of as I mentioned earlier, into what we think or where we think industrial Ethernet cable should be used.
Right. Yeah. Moving kind of at the speed of the innovation of your customers. And that's a
Bingo.
sign of a great company. You guys even describe those cables as roadie proof, which is,
Yeah.
which, for anybody who's seen, been in that environment at all, that's a big statement. That's great.
Yep. And that those cables in those markets are really not in traditionally within the scope of what Gruber has done. However, the man sitting there to your right, John Dotson, he's probably been as active as anybody there at Gruber, and we've worked on a number of applications and projects over the last 5-6 years using some of these cables. So it's going to be it's a fast growing part of our business. And I think ultimately it will be a much more significant part of our business with Gruber than what it has been to date.
And that's one thing I'm learning from John is the fact that we can, take in from the client what they're looking for and work together to, give them a result that they're aiming for. Whatever that application is, it could be a one-off application. It could be in a factory that they need a special cabling solution. But Gruber's been very innovative in doing things like that.
Yep, and we depend on open communications with companies like y'all. Again, we're a small company. We're very nimble, and the way we've come up with a lot of our product or suggestions for new products has been when somebody brings us something, an idea or something they haven't been able to find someplace else. And we're able to utilize our engineering talent there and where we can prototype cables. We really believe in having open communications all the way to the end user, level if we can, and then work together to solve problems that exist out there where there really is no good solution in existence today.
Great.
Yeah, talking about again back to the like broadcast cabling and so forth. Have you seen POE increase and an increase in need for those applications?
Yes. Everybody's talking about POE these days, and all of our cables, even down to our 28 gauge commercial Ethernet cable, which we call our mini Cat 6 or our mini Cat 6A, all of our data cables are capable of handling POE. Now, people will ask us, well, how much power can it handle or whatever? And as I understand it, really the limiting factor or what needs to be considered in all of that is what kind of bundle sizes the end user is going to use when they're putting these cables together. Because when you start putting power through those cables, you do start having a heat increase and a heat rise. And the more cables you bundle together, it makes sense that you're going to have more heat as you go there. So there are some industry guidelines. I believe the IEEE, maybe NEC has some guidelines on how much heat rise you can have in a bundle there. But yes, we're seeing all sorts of POE requirements in that. In everything we do. And one of the new products, and I don't know if one of you are going to ask me about this later, but I'll go ahead and jump in on this, that we're in the process of developing and have pretty much finalized some of our designs is for single pair Ethernet, where, a standard Ethernet cable like the one, the patch cord you held up a moment ago, John, that has 4 pairs in that. And there are limits dictated within Ethernet standards of 100 meter length, or just over 300 feet in terms of the length that an individual cable segment can be. What this single pair Ethernet will do is be able to provide for significantly longer cable runs. And say in a commercial environment, you might see this in smart buildings where someone may want to have a cable run of 500 meters out to a temperature sensor or a light sensor to maybe control some automatic curtains or some automatic, whether or not you need to turn on and off air conditioner blowers at a certain time of day. Or in the industrial world, when we get into that Internet of Things, to run 2 sensors in a processing plant. In Texas, we think a lot of refineries and things like that. But single pair Ethernet is poised to become a very huge market on that. What's kind of holding things back right now is getting the internet or the Ethernet circuitry built into some of these end devices that are going to be out there on the end of these. And then also having the industry finalize on connector standards that will be used. Most of the big connector companies have all come up with their own way of terminating, but to the best of my knowledge, there's not really a standard interface yet for the connectors for single pair Ethernet.
Wow. Okay. So it wouldn't be like a standard RJ45.
It could be on for some of the commercial product, but one of the things that's going to enable this to happen is the gauge sizes of the conductors is probably going to be larger. Like on the industrial side, I know that we're talking in terms of 18 gauge conductors up to about 22. And in our harsh environment Ethernet connectors today, the largest we offer is a 22 gauge. If you start getting bigger than 22 gauge, you really have trouble making that fit in an RJ45 style connector, just due to the physical limitations within the connector itself. So that's where some of this agreement's got to be done to come up with some interconnect standards to be able to utilize these larger conductor constructed cables.
Wow. Now, going back now, let's talk about your Datamax Mini 6, the 28 gauge. This is something we make a lot. We use a lot. This is a great product.
Yep.
You were one of the very first customers that Quabbin had that really jumped into that thing with all 4 feet and started working, trying to market that for us. And we'll be forever grateful to you, John, for helping us launch that line.
And to that end, for everybody watching, we want to make sure that if you fill in the comments that you want a free sample of the Mini 6, we will send it to you. we want you to go ahead and just comment. We'll reach out to you and we'll get you a sample of this for your application.
Yeah, let me just take a second and mention what the driver was behind coming up with that smaller cable, with that smaller conductor size in it, that 28 gauge conductor. I mentioned earlier data centers, where you can, we all see these when we're driving around any city that we live in. I mean, they could easily be mistaken for an Amazon warehouse, but you'll notice there's only a few cars in front of one of them, and there's no loading docks on them. But the big killer within data centers is heat, and they go to great lengths to try to keep the heat from all the servers and everything else, switches, all that down within a data center. What drove the development of the Mini 6 and then the Mini 6A, which is a Cat 6A, was the need within the cabinets within the data center to reduce the bundle size of those cables down to a size where you could get a lot more airflow through there to help dissipate a lot of that heat. And then also just to reduce the volume and weight of those cable bundles within that. And we actually, again, had developed this at the request of some particular customers that were seeing a requirement for making some of those improvements in data centers. And we sold a ton of that material long before the regulating agencies made the approvals to have it an official part of the infrastructure. A lot of companies said, look, we don't need it to be officially blessed. We see what the benefits are going to be, and we want to go ahead and use that now. So yes, Gruber's done a great job with that product line.
And I did want to mention, so the offer, of course, is for end users. So IT managers, you got a server environment. We want to demonstrate our product for you. We're confident you'll like it. That's the samples are for that. If you're an installer or if you're a distributor and you want to stock the cable, we'll send you a sample. Not for home use, of course. I'm sorry, we can't offer that. But I want to make sure that if you
you're gonna know.
yeah. If you're in the IT world and this is a product that you could use at scale, or you're redoing a server room or whatever, we want to make sure that you have a chance to sample this, test it. I've had customers get these and they absolutely love it, and have just ordered bunches of it as a result of taking it into their environment, testing it out, running it through their paces, whatever they deem is the way to test these out, and they've just done a bang up job. So thank you.
Yeah, and one of the key reasons for people coming to a company like Gruber to get their patch cord is, they're not going to be bound by standard length patch cords, where they're available 5 feet, 7 feet, 10 feet, 15, 25, 35, and 50. If somebody needs 16 and a half foot and 21 and a half foot patch cords, that's right down your alley in being able to provide exactly what someone needs for their particular application and installation.
And not just size, but color, right? I mean, Quabbin offers a variety of colors, so
we're able to rainbow colors, and then of course our lead times in manufacturing
are great.
Got to promote that always.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I just had a customer recently order just it was over a mile and a quarter of different lengths of Quabbin cable, patch cords everywhere from 8 meters to 30 meters in length, and they did it because our turnaround was a couple days.
Amazing.
So
let me piggyback on that, Mark. One of the things that I noticed immediately when I came to Quabbin was and impressed me was our commitment to inventory. Where our primary warehouse is there in Ware, We have another big warehouse here in Dallas, where I am. We've got a pretty big warehouse in the Los Angeles area. We've added one in Jacksonville, Florida, and then our most recent one is in Tucson, Arizona, and that was to primarily support some very big cable assembly houses we've got down in Hermosillo and in the Mexican state of Sonora. But we also try to keep material in there that Gruber's going to need so that we can give you next day delivery on all of that. Now, during the plague years, when supply chain issues became just absolutely crazy and outlandish, we suffered. We didn't escape that. Really, nobody did. We ended up getting some very long lead times, which was very unusual for us, and it caused me to never take our great lead time situation for granted again. But what our manufacturing and operations teams have been able to do over the last few months is on the popular styles and colors of our commercial data cables, our lead times are stocked to a maximum of 2 weeks. So typically, if it's not in stock and we do have to make it, it's to maybe put a jacket color on it that may not be something that we would typically stock, maybe something like light green or something like that. So we try to do our part to support y'all to make sure that that end customer is able to get the product they need when they need it, even if they waited too long to order it.
Nice.
So
This is great
again,
stuff.
we try to come up with ways to say yes more than we come up with ways to say no, that we can't do something. So we really appreciate your all's quick turnaround as well.
Oh, thank you. And back to the 28 gauge for a second. Do we see this in the future maybe migrating to a 32 gauge? Do we see the footprint getting smaller?
I have not had anybody ask me yet for 32 gauge patch cords. I have had people show me some 32 gauge patch cords. But when you get into that small of a conductor size, we had to delimit the length of how far you can run a patch cord when we came out with the 28 gauge. We had to limit that from what our standard 24 or 26 gauge would be. So like on our Mini 6, Mini 6A, I think our Mini 6 is limited to 56 meters, and the Cat 6A, the 6A version of it, I think is limited to 55 meters. The applications as I've seen it for the 32 gauge has really just been from bay to bay within an enclosure. So maybe from a switch to a patch panel. So we're talking lengths that are maybe a foot to 2 feet. I would like to mention that one of the things that has been a great benefit to Quabbin when we develop, say, the 28 gauge is we have some excellent working relationships with a couple of RJ45 plug manufacturers that tooled connectors for us so that when we introduce the cables, there'd be a way to terminate them. It doesn't matter how great your cable is. If you don't have a connector for it, you can't just set a roll of wire on something and have it work. So the two primary connector manufacturers that we work with in no particular order are Bell Stewart and then Sentinel Connector Systems. To the best of our knowledge, neither one of them yet has seen enough need to tool up a 32 gauge plug. So, if we do see that as a market that's going to have some magnitude and size to it, then yeah, I'm sure we'll probably get into that. But as of right now, it seems to be just more of a curiosity factor than anything else, unless you've seen, hard requirements coming across for it.
No, I have not.
No. And, the the utility of the cable goes down as the diameter reduces, right? So you said functional length being 52 meters on the mini 6 as it is, right? So the attenuation data loss, the acceptable data loss reaches to that point, and then it's doesn't meet standard, right? So as you make the cable smaller, it creates less functionality for the cable. In other words, there's not as many applications that it can be deployed in, right? Yep.
Right. And the cable becomes a little more fragile too, because there's just not that much copper there to accept the wear and tear of continued flexing or installation or changing it. So it's going to be something that's going to be interesting to watch and see if this 32 gauge thing does in fact take off.
Gotcha.
So on the opposite side of the spectrum, it looks like we're heading more towards Category 8, and you guys now have a new Category 8 product out there on the market.
We have developed a Category 8 cable. Now it is going to also be something that's going to have a much more limited market. The Cat 8 market, as we see, it's going to be restricted to data centers and to test equipment. Really, the one customer we've been working with to date on this is, and I have not been personally involved in this, is a test equipment company. And what a Cat 8 cable will do is be able to provide signal passage of 25 gigabit per second or 40 gigabit per second. And our Cat 8 cable uses individually shielded pairs and then an overall shield, and it uses foamed FEP insulation for the interconductors that make up those pairs. But it's I can't imagine 40 gigabits per second across copper cable. It's pretty mind blowing.
It is. And then speaking of that, is at what point in time? I mean, copper can only expand so far, right? The reaches of what we can push through copper comes to an end.
Yeah, I think that fiber has so many advantages when you get into those high data rates, but still the cost of the electronics at either end of those those fiber cables is still really, I think, the limiting factor in why people still have an interest in copper solutions in some of those applications. But I'm not an engineer by training, but I'd have to think that 40 gigabits a second is going to be about the max for copper, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah. Are there any length restrictions again for the thinner cable?
For the Cat 8, I don't know what the exact max is, but I do believe that it's less than 30 meters. Again, the Cat 8 cables are intended to be used in very specific places and applications and needs, and it's going to typically be maybe between cabinets or within a cabinet in data centers. So it's going to be short runs, very fast data throughput, and it's certainly not going to have the market size or demand of Cat 6 or Cat 6A. Those are going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
Now we've talked about some of the things that are upcoming. Are there any other things in R&D that we should look for?
Those are really the two biggies right now, Mark, is the Cat 8 and the single pair Ethernet. Again, if you guys run into some weird and wonderful applications or requests from customers, please bring those to us, because we sure like looking at opportunities that we might be able to utilize some of our strengths in trying to resolve.
Great.
And what about, do you see Cat 5 kind of falling off? The Cat 6 is now the new norm.
We still make Cat 5e, and to the best of my knowledge, we have no plans at this point to do away with it. really the pricing of the Cat 6 cable has come down to the point where the differential between 5E and Cat 6 is really negligible these days. So, I would, if I was talking to someone who was still asking about Cat 5E, I would probably do my best to upsell them to Cat 6. Now, the exception to that is in that industrial world and all of that. Most of those applications are still Cat 5e. There's just not that need for that much data within these industrial systems. Exception being where maybe you have camera vision or you're passing video or something like that, and that's where we see a lot of people move into the Cat 6/Cat 6A, and most of our industrial cables or harsh environment cables are either 6 or /6A. So they're really built to be able to provide 6A standards.
So at what point in time, when you're talking 6 to 6A, what's that divide? Where do you say, you know what, we really should go with a 6A cable versus a 6?
Well, when I was working for my previous employer, and they did a lot of horizontal cable for fixed installation. The big market at that time was hospitals. And the reason for that was, say, in moving radiology files from a radiology lab, whether it's a CAT scan or an MRI or whatever, just those file sets are so huge that 6A made a lot of sense to use that. We would see a lot of 6A used in banking and financial applications too, where there's an awful lot of data going back. But quite honestly, I think a lot of people that go 6A just say, look, I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet on the front end of this thing, future-proof my application for X, however many years that we're down there, and just try to get a step ahead of it rather than just do an incremental increase from 5E to 6.
Now you say future-proof. So the future is wide open. So are we talking future proofing with 6A? Is that good for 3 years, 7 years, 10 years? We talking 40 years? What do you
You're trying
guys
to catch me in a lie. I know that's what you're doing, John. You're trying to catch me in a lie, and I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah.
With this, I would have never thought. I'm looking to upgrade the internet in my house right now, and I remember when we had the fiber Ethernet put in here, and it was like a 50 to 75 megabit per second. Who can ever need more than that?
Right.
And now I'm looking at probably a gigabit or more as we go forward. So I don't know. I can't tell you what the future is, but I sure tell you that there's not going to be any decrease in demand for Ethernet as long as I'm alive, or either of you guys are probably alive. It's only going to grow, and it's only going to proliferate more than what it is today.
Yeah, I agree. John, we've got some business to attend to here. So first of all, Audrey says hi to Steve.
Hi, Audrey.
She's happy to see you on the Gruber Wired Hour. And then we have a comment from Steve Manlate.
Sam.
Manlate?
Yeah.
Sam. Yeah, Sam. Sorry. And there, he wants to know if there are any length restrictions for the Mini 6 or so we talked about a 52 meter?
About 55 meters or
55.
whatever is what we look at as pretty much maxing out the Mini 6. Again, most of the applications for that are in data centers. So either within a cabinet or cabinet to cabinet. So, we haven't, to the best of my knowledge, ever run into any applications where we just couldn't go far enough with it, in its intended use. One other thing that I want to mention is this year we did come up with a great new catalog, which talks about a lot of the products that we have in the front of it. But the back end of this is a great reference guide that provides just an awful lot of good reference material, about why return loss is important. Why impedance or attenuation is important, and what Quabbin does to help do that. I'll provide this to y'all in a PDF format,
Oh,
so
nice.
you can
Great.
send
Yeah.
that out to anybody that might want it. And we've also got print copies that we could provide as well. But this is a wonderful, wonderful tool here. It's not just valuable as a piece of Quabbin sales literature. It's a great reference guide for anybody that is using patch cords in their daily work.
So question, when you're talking the length, is that the length of the entire run of the system, or is it just the length of one complete cable run? I mean, if we're
That
tying
would
these
typically
together,
be the length of the cable, not the channel.
okay.
And again, you're going to make me lie if you start trying to say how much at either end of that patch cord can be. But there's some pretty hard, fast recommendations for what the total length of a channel can be.
Right, and I would imagine that that length would be from a device to a device, so it would be the total length of the run, not just the cable itself from plugging into the wall, but there would be a run associated with that up to it.
Correct.
Potentially, yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, to then go into a patch panel, and so patch panel to patch panel, and again, that's the application for our products.
Great, and so with
patch panels.
Yep, and with the smaller products, so we could envision having smaller cable management panels as well to utilize that. And we know that, in data centers, not only is space a premium, but heat reduction is necessitated, especially by the proliferation of AI applications now. Those are processor intensive applications that really create a lot of, kind of like the Bitcoin, right? Where those mining rigs generate a lot of heat, use a lot of power.
Yes, they do.
In the data centers now with AI, we're seeing a lot of that as well. A lot of heat generated. So being able to utilize smaller footprint cables increases even you think hundreds of cables and the diameter, you can increase the airflow in those environments. Yep.
Yeah, it's real easy using those mini sixes to go from bundles that are, as big as a forearm down to one that's about the size of a broomstick, and when you can have that kind of reduction, you can sure get a lot more airflow through there and keep things cooler.
What about talk briefly AI? How's it affecting your industry, your side of the industry, and so forth?
I don't know, John, to really say, but AI has a way of kind of scaring me a little bit. I remember the Terminator movies,
Yeah.
and I keep looking at this thinking I've seen how this ends, and it doesn't end real well. There's parts of me that are glad that I'm at the age and point in my career and stuff that I am. But AI is going to be a fascinating thing to see how it works out and becomes a huge part of our daily lives and whatnot. And again, it's going to only drive the need for bigger and more data centers and data handling and all of that. So there's going to be no end to the requirements for cable. There's going to be no end to the requirements for cabinets, patch panels, air movement devices, cooling devices, and everything else.
I know we're coming up to the end here
Yes.
of our wired hour. What do you see coming up this next year for Quabbin?
Well, we're going to get fully back out into the marketplace with our travel. A lot of places on the West Coast this year have still been somewhat limiting in wanting outside visitors to come in. We're stepping up some of our trade show involvement into greater footprint at the Automate show, which is a big factory automation and robotics show. I went to my first one last year in Detroit. It's going to be this year in May in Chicago. But getting back out in front of customers, trying to find out what they need, what they could use help with, and again, just try to get back to doing what we do well, and that's helping people solve problems.
Nice.
Great. Well,
Very
it would be a shame not to have at least one dad turkey joke.
Go for
Thanksgiving, because John created this entire there's a list here, and I just gotta ask John, what sound does a limping turkey make?
I don't know. What is that, Mark?
Wobble wobble.
Steve, got any good dad jokes for us, sir?
I'm glad you did that at the end than at the beginning, or I might have bailed.
Well, we would have lost our audience, I'm sure, if we'd have done more than a couple of these. That's for sure.
Hey, what did the turkey say to the computer?
What?
Go.
Oh, man. It's just going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. Well, I don't know.
Guys.
Yep.
It is almost time to end. We got those outros ready when you are. Just, Steve, so if you want to hang out on the call after the show ends, we can do a wrap after the show as well.
Great. Well, we want to thank Steve Spoonts for being here today on our special Thanksgiving edition of Gruber Wired Hour.
Yay! Thank you, Steve. We appreciate it every time we have an opportunity to speak with you.
I really enjoyed this. This is the first thing like this I've ever done, and I really had a good time. I sincerely appreciate y'all inviting me.
Well, you're very welcome. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And to all our viewers out there, let's do the same as well. Have a happy Thanksgiving,
yes, happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank y'all, and bye Quabbin from Gruber.
Yeah.
Amen. Yes. Check out Gruber. You can contact us via the website, gruber.com, and we will reach back out and take care of whatever you need. And as you heard Steve talk about today, there's really nothing that we can't work together with clients on and imagine.
All right. We'll see you guys. See you guys back next week.
See you next week. Have a great weekend.
Yes, we'll see everybody next week for the Gruber Wired Hour, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and right here on this Bat channel.
Go Cowboys.
Oh,
Go
no.
Cowboys.